Not excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is Cole Cubelic. Cole, I know you've got a ton going on right now. You've got McElroy and Cubelic. You've got UFL is back. You
Back.
are very busy with that. You've got the Cube Show, which everybody should go subscribe to. But my main pressing question that I wanted to have you on today to ask was, how long was your Disney recovery?
I didn't have an opportunity for it to be that long. We decided to fly through Atlanta, so it's a 2-hour drive from Birmingham because of the money that we saved not to connect. So we got back Thursday night to Atlanta about 9:30. Drove home. Daughter had a fever, had to pull over. She threw up. Had coaches meetings on Friday. Traveled on Saturday. Game on Sunday. Came home Sunday night. Delayed again. Got home after midnight. So it's probably still not there. Still not recovered?
When was the last time you slept for at least 7 hours?
No, no, no. It actually may have been Disney because there were 2 nights that as soon as we walked in, we got the kids ready for bed and just went to sleep. And I don't even know what time it was because I know my wife had an alarm set for the next morning for rope drop for the Disney insiders who know what that is. Unfortunately, I now do too. But not hating. My wife is super organized, 10 times more organized than I am. So she's a big reason that our kids were able to experience as much as they did when we were there. But yeah, I don't know. It doesn't feel like it feels like it's been a while.
Yeah.
One thing I wish I could do is go to bed early. I can't do it. I can't. I start doing show prep and thinking about things. And then I'm like, oh, I'm going to go watch this D lineman that committed to LSU. And then 3D linemen later, I'm still watching other guys. And I'm just like, it's 11:30. What are we doing? So, yeah.
I've noticed that with you and your flurry of late night tweets. You'll have random tweets about Gonzaga basketball at 11:45. I'm like, Cole's insomnia is just kicking in right now.
It's actually not insomnia. I could sleep. I just don't go get in bed to sleep. And my wife's pretty good about it. She'll go to bed early and she'll sit there and tell me, like, come to bed. Like, you're going to be tired tomorrow. You're going to be tired tomorrow. And I'm just like, I'm stubborn. So, yeah.
Who do you dislike more, PFF grades or people who come at you for your perfect Final Four prediction, which was flawless, by the way? I don't know how you saw it coming.
I don't know how anybody can sit there and say you don't know ball if you pick 4 1 seeds and you get that right. And then try to move the goalpost on it and say, well, anybody gets lucky every now and then. I had McNeese in my Final Four last year. So it's not like I'm a chalk guy every year. I just like the draws for those teams. I thought there was pretty big separation outside of maybe Alabama and Michigan State between the ones and everybody else. So it just felt like it was reasonable. And then 2, I felt like if you really looked at the bracket, there was a good chance for an upset or 2 for almost all of those 1 seeds. Now, it didn't happen because Duke got Bama. And actually, I think Houston, if they win the national championship, will be the first team ever to play the highest seed possible in every round because they're going to get a 1-1 in the Final Four and then the championship game. And then I guess it happened the rest of the way through. But it looked like Auburn could catch an upset maybe in Florida. I was really worried about UConn after that. It felt like they might get an upset or 2. So who the hell knows? I mean, it's brackets. All I know is I'm winning my family bracket right now. My wife won it last year, and I'm 1 point ahead of my 7-year-old who was like 10 points ahead of us. He missed 1 game in the first round and had no teams lost in further rounds. And I'm sitting there going, we are never going to hear the end of this. Like I told my wife, I was like, it's over for like 6 months. It's all he's going to talk about. So I'm hoping I can hold on.
No way. No. If that had happened to me when I was 7, I would talk about that for 15 years through college.
He won a tennis ball home run derby at baseball practice one day, and then he still talks about it. I'm like, dude, y'all were standing on second base. Like, stop. We're not. Come on. I don't need to knock you off your pedestal here, but like, stop.
Okay. And by the way, Cole is rocking just a fire Auburn shooting shirt, retro Auburn shooting shirt. Shout out home field. I said you look like Charles Barkley. And I mean that.
Warm up. We're getting warmed up here.
Love it. Absolutely love it. I do think that while most of this is very hypothetical, this conversation, there is some of it in the revenue sharing era that is going to matter with these conversations behind closed doors. You might absolutely hate this question, but I'll ask it anyway. Is Auburn a basketball school now?
You know what? Right now, yeah, it is. And I don't have a problem saying that. I'm rocking basketball 1984 warm-up shirt. I love it if it is, because there are times outside of a Cliff Ellis year or 2, and if you are paying attention, during Barkley or the Persons, that you never thought that was a feasible statement or going to be a feasible statement or any portion of anybody's reality. So the fact that we can even debate it now, I think it's pretty badass. I'm not one of those guys that cares about, football has to be first. Now, I will say this, and I'll never back down from this, and you know this. The Iron Bowl is a football game.
I know. Yeah.
I'm not letting that go. Y'all can come up with your own nickname for your own things, but that's a football game. And the Egg Bowl is a football game. So, we don't do the largest cocktail party of basketball. Like, why do we do it for other games? But I think it's great if Auburn is a basketball school. I want Auburn to be an everything school because I think most Auburn fans get behind. Auburn has, and this is, some people, I'm going to catch hell for this. They're going to say this is a slight at Auburn. Auburn has never been dominant enough in anything to bring in fringe fans for just that sport. And that's not a knock because very few schools have, like, who has that? Like Alabama football, Kentucky basketball, Duke basketball, Kansas basketball, Notre Dame football. So, I mean, LSU baseball, Mississippi State baseball, maybe. Like, very few sports in any genre have been that dominant to where, like, in 10 years, we're going to have all these South Carolina women's basketball fans. They're going to be running around. They're like, I've loved the Lady Gamecocks my whole life. And it's just like, listen, my entire family lives in Columbia. I promise you, it wasn't talked about much before Dawn Staley. So I think it's great that there are other sports and things. I think Butch is doing a great job of baseball. And I can remember when Hal Baird had Auburn baseball rolling. They were in the College World Series, and you had Tim Hudson and those guys and Todd Faulkner who were just raking. And I want Auburn to be an everything school, man. National championship in golf last year. It was fun when Suni Lee and gymnastics was doing well. They went to the tournament this year. So I'm all for it. And it's why I keep saying, like, Bruce Pearl is on the fringe of being the most important figure in Auburn athletics history. It's not anymore about building him a statue. It's not, is he the best coach, the best basketball coach, the best basketball figure? Like, I think maybe minus a national championship, but then you'd have to put Chizik there if that was your only guidelines. I think you could realistically talk about him as the most important figure in the history of Auburn sports. And also, Connor, because if basketball wasn't good right now, think about how much more negativity football would be getting.
True.
And that could be hurting in recruiting. That might not allow assistants or even Hugh Freeze to want to be there. That might keep people away from helping NIL or donating money. So he's taken a lot of heat off some other things that haven't been very good. And so it's even past wins of what he's doing. But we keep coming up. I mean, it's like every Monday I come into McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, and it's like Bruce Pearl for the first time in program history. And I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, I just said, I'm done saying that because he is pretty much everything that's ever happened to basketball. No offense against Charles. No offense to Sonny or Cliff or Chris Porter or, Doc Hollywood Robinson or any of those guys. But, like, he has put it more on the map than anybody besides Charles. And Charles is, Charles, Bo, Frank, you could make an argument because of their careers after Auburn are that much important to the school. But Bruce is doing it all at Auburn. And I think you could have a real conversation about not just the Mount Rushmore of Auburn athletics, like the individual of Auburn athletics that has been more important than anybody else.
It's a great point. And you're right with the football stuff. Being able to turn the page to basketball has certainly helped Hugh Freeze. And kind of makes me wonder about a really interesting hypothetical that would have never been asked probably in the history of the program. And I realize this situation can't actually occur, so nobody get mad at me for throwing this idea out there, but you have a good pulse on this and you'd be able to answer this better than I would. If there were a scenario in which Auburn is playing a first round NCAA tournament game at the same time as a regular season football game, let's say against Arkansas. So we're not talking about the Iron Bowl. We're talking about regular season SEC. And it's in early October or something. It's not like last year where the season's already lost after September. And it's just usual Auburn football buzz. I realize this is impossible, but which one of those situations has more eyeballs on it? Because I threw that out there and I went back and forth, and I don't even know if I have a definitive answer.
Well, context here, number one, eyeballs, like nationally from a media perspective. If you're just
Auburn
talking
eyeballs,
if just you're talking Auburn
TV.
fans,
yeah. Because obviously more people are going to be at a football game than a basketball game, not
Yeah, I
denying
mean,
that.
even then, because like you're only going to get 8,000 people in,
Yeah.
so it doesn't matter. But they're going to want to watch it. If they're ranked number one and the football team's 3-2, or 5-2 even, but probably not a playoff team, it might be basketball, and that might depend on the opponent and maybe what was on the line, so to speak. And I know regular season basketball, it's hard to say what's really on the line for an individual game. But I think that you'd probably be looking at what was down the road for both, and basketball might be a little bit more important at that time. See, again, I don't really care saying that. Like, it doesn't bother me. Just like if Bruce was number 5 and, Auburn's playing Arkansas for what looks to be kind of a college football playoff play-in game. Like, if you lose, you're probably out. If you win, you're going to be in the discussion to get in. Then it's going to be football. So, and I don't think Bruce would push back on that. So they can both coexist. We've talked about this for decades. Certain schools, we've seen Florida do it. Texas did it for a little while. Certain schools have found ways to make it work. And I've always wondered why Carolina's not better in football. The uniforms, the Jordan deal, like the basketball should be utilized. Like Saban took all his recruits to basketball games because he liked basketball. It's like a normal thing that you do on an official visit, which official visits aren't normal anymore. I mean, these guys are getting checks to take official visits now, so it's definitely different. But that was what you did, like Friday or Saturday night, you went to the basketball game. So they should coexist because they can benefit each other so much. And even like we talked about earlier, that offsetting of negativity can be gigantic. I mean, it can be, I think even like from a Georgia perspective this year, it probably took a little bit away from why didn't we do this? Why weren't we that? Why didn't we finish here? Because all of a sudden they got a top 25 basketball team and they're not used to having that. And that's fun to go watch. And we're going to pay attention to that. So instead of that tidal wave of negativity, some of that energy goes into basketball and you focus a little bit more on that as opposed to, well, why can't we get a left guard? And everybody's pissed off at the O-line coach.
The only area where I'd push back on that is if it starts impacting the optics. And if you have empty stadiums, that obviously changes the conversation about football. And you've got an athletic director looking around going, this is our big revenue driver.
Oh, yeah.
And it's great that everybody's – and I say this as an Indiana grad who has seen this many, many times. When the calendar turns to mid-October, late November, and all of a sudden it's an empty football stadium, you're like, what are we doing with this football coach? And that's obviously where all of a sudden that pressure is going to go back on. But you're exactly right. And there is definitely something to be said for it. One of the stats that I always like to throw at you was the fact that Auburn, before last year, had not had a top 40 passing offense since 1997. And it finally ended this past year, of all years to have it end, when the quarterback situation was an absolute mess. And, it felt like an Achilles heel for too much of the season. Now it might be the most talented receiver room that Auburn's ever had. But at the same time, year one of the Hugh Freeze scheme for Jackson Arnold, what's a real, or I shouldn't definitively say Jackson Arnold, but for whoever is taking over at quarterback, could be Ashton Daniels as well. But what's a realistic expectation for the Auburn passing game?
They still didn't get the 1,000-yard receiver thing, though, did they?
No.
Keandre Lambert. Is that Ronnie Daniels still?
Who is it? I used to know this off the top of my head, and I've since forgot it. But no, they have not gotten the 1,000-yard receiver. Yeah.
Okay, first off, I think your point about Jackson Arnold is fair, and it's one that people should utilize a little bit more. I don't think that this is a plug-and-go situation. This is not a Dylan Gabriel from Oklahoma to Oregon. He needs a reset. He needs a hard reset. And that's talking to guys that were on staff with him last year. That's talking to guys that have coached him previously. And it's not really a knock on him. Greg and I had an amazing conversation about this. If you wanted to go find it, I think it was, what's today, Wednesday? I think it was Monday's show. We stumbled into this. And he started giving these, because I was like, it may have been Tuesday's show, because we talked about it a little bit Monday, and then we came back to it on Tuesday. And basically what I told him was, I was looking at some different things across the league over the weekend, and I started going back and paying a little bit more attention to Jackson Arnold, and I came to the conclusion that I think they probably benched him too early.
I agree.
And then I don't think people talk enough. Like, a lot of people talk about the offensive line issues, which was fair. They were so beat up. And then you get to a situation where you're not practicing guys, but you're playing them because you have to have them. And then the two guys that end up being in the game next to each other, they didn't even practice together. Now they're playing together and they're not 100%. and he lost his top 4 receivers that nobody talks about that. Like
top 5. Yeah.
Deion Burks is going to, I am all in on Deion Burks this year. I think he's having an amazing year. Like he was going to be their dynamo. He's not even out there half the time. The other top 3 receivers aren't out there. He had some running backs dinged up. Like there was just so much that went into it. I love Seth Luttrell, but Seth doesn't usually coach quarterbacks, and now he's coaching quarterbacks. And then Seth is fired, and you're trying to do it with Joe John Finley. It's just, I think we look at him and man, he struggled. The lights got to him. But there's so much that went into that. Greg rolls that into how Nick Saban coached him. And he gave great references as to, when Coach Saban coached me, it was always, don't screw it up. Don't F it up. Whatever you do, don't make a mistake. Hey, don't screw this up for us. Whatever you do, don't throw an interception here. Play it safe. Don't mess up. And my observation of Jackson Arnold last year was, why can't this kid let go of the football? We see a lot of guys that were don't throw that. And they throw it. And I talked to Skip Holtz over the weekend doing a UFL game. We're talking about Matt Corral, and he's just a little bit too much of a risk taker, but he's the most talented guy I have. He's we'll be in practice. And he's no. And he'll go over to Matt and say, hey, man, you can't make that throw. And he's Coach, I just completed it. What are you talking about? He's but he can make those throws. And so it kind of got me thinking even more about Jackson Arnold was his head coach last year approaching it that way of whatever you do, don't mess this up. We have an all-time defense. We have an all-time linebacker, an all-time safety, numbers at D-line, edge guys that can get home. Don't screw it up, man, whatever you do. And you can't play quarterback that way. And it got me thinking about Lane Kiffin or Lincoln Riley or Dan Mullen. You think Dan Mullen's ever going to Tim Tebow and being hey, Timmy, just don't F this up, buddy, and we'll be okay? You think Lane Kiffin's going to Jackson Dart last year saying, hey, whatever you do, just don't make a mistake? Hell no. Those guys are hey, man, let it rip. Go get it. Go full attack mode. We want everything on this drive. So I think that even worked against him a little bit, and that could change. But my point in all this is that he does need a little bit of a rewiring. He needs a little bit of a reset. And what comes into play there is Hugh's going to have to coach him. He's going to have to coach him hard. And there's not going to be any reliance on other things or other people or experience. It's this has got to be coached into him, and not just the offense. I think some mental and emotional aspects have to be coached into him. But Connor, he's got all the ability, man. He throws a beautiful, the ball. There are certain guys, the ball just looks different when it comes out of their hand. Jackson Arnold's one of those guys, and he's got great wheels. I think he's tough as nails. He just needs a little bit of a reset mentally and emotionally, finding his calm and getting to that comfort level of not thinking, will I make a mistake? Can I take this chance? Of just whatever you see, react to it and go.
How close is Cam Coleman to Ryan Williams?
They're just, in my mind, they're two totally different guys. We had Alabama early last year, so I talked to David Blue about him a lot, and I talked to his high school coach who played quarterback at Southern Miss a lot. And just some of the gifts that you hear those people talk about. His high school coach told me that the first 2 or 3 weeks that he moved to receiver, that he was just riding his ass every day. He was why are you loafing? Why are you not going full speed? What is your problem? And he said, I finally got to the conclusion that he just made it look so easy. He was going full speed. It just looked like he was going half speed. And then Baloo telling me about his change of direction and his start-stop times, which they measure, that are literally off. Think about this, off the charts at Alabama. Way past anybody they've had since Baloo has been there, which is pretty mind-boggling considering the guys they've had. That he is to full speed at 1.5 steps, which is unheard of. And the change of direction and the fluidity. So I think Cam Coleman is more of a get out of my way, I'm going to go get it. And Ryan Williams is I don't really care how close you are to me. I'm going to find a way to catch it and get away from you, and there's nothing you can do about it. So they're just different guys. And I don't know which one. It probably depends on your offense and what else you have, depending on which one you would rather have. If I have a true guy, if I have a move guy that I can put in this, if I had Elijah Moore, okay, I want Cam Coleman. But if I have Randy Moss, I want Ryan Williams. So, because you can use him in so many different ways. I just think it depends on what else you have. And I think even though they both play receiver, they're almost on total different ends of the receiver spectrum.
I told people that the next time that we had you on, we would ask you about Caden Proctor, a guy that I think a lot of people have a lot of different opinions on him. What is your perspective on the player that he's been and the player that he's projected to be?
Super talented, should not be able to move like that at that size. A guy that I would reference as a Vince McMahon first round draft pick. Like he should leave football and go straight into WWE. Just it's funny when I had that UFL game this weekend and I was talking to DC's personnel director and we were talking about offensive linemen and he said something I've never thought about and I thought it was brilliant because we were talking about receivers and running backs and all this and he goes, you don't just go find an offensive lineman somewhere. He said, and this is the way I put it to people and I love this. He said, how many guys that are 6'5", 320 and their fingertips stop at their kneecaps do you see walking around town? How many bank tellers are 6'6", 330? Like, how many guys bagging your groceries are 6'3", 315? Like, it's not normal. Then you got to get them that know how to play football. And then most important, Connor, that want to play football. And so you just don't have physical traits like he does very often. Do I think he'd probably be better suited at guard? Yes, I do. Would he be a better football player 20 pounds lighter? Absolutely. If he could go through the metamorphosis that Evan Neal went through from his junior year, I don't know if he was a junior, whatever the eligibility, his next to last year, when like he physically looked like a different person, but was still like 345, I think it would help him a lot. Also, he has not had a lot of time to develop. And he didn't go through spring ball last year. And I said that going into the year. I said, do not expect a massive jump from this young man. He has not practiced. And you can't get better at that position without practicing. I could take you out there today and for the next 7,000 days, and we could run pass sets and go T-board right, T-board left. I'd put you through the chutes, push the sled. Until you're blocking people that are trying to make you look bad, full speed, you ain't going to learn how to do it. And you're not going to get better at it. Now, he's got a lot of game reps, and that's great. But he needs practice reps, developmental reps, technique and fundamental reps. And he's not going to get them this spring either. So I think he's got a chance to be a really good player. I don't know if he is as twitchy or fluid enough to be a great tackle. He could be a great college tackle just because he's so big and moves so well, he can get away with it. But man, all I can think about is if he was 20 pounds lighter and playing guard, he would absolutely be dropping people on the back of their helmets.
And it's interesting to see him all over these preseason All-America teams. He's going to get all the first-round discussion in the world, and I get it for the exact traits that you described. But, yeah, for someone that it still feels like we have a lot of questions about, that's typically not what, the conversations that we're having about guys like that. And he is certainly part of them.
Well, it's not that you can't do it with his body type. Like you look at like a Willie Rowe or a Will Shields, like those guys were pretty athletic with similar body types. Like Larry Allen was probably that big, honestly. Like I don't know if we ever got a true weight on him, but like his mass, his frame, like a DJ Fluker type guy. He can do it. It's just I always think about where you're going to be, like where can you reach your ceiling? And the other part of the preseason All-American teams is like, who are you putting on there? There's not a ton of dudes that you look at and are like, now that is a first round tackle. Like that's the guy that I want to go get right now. And it's unfortunately with a lot of positions, I feel like right now, like I feel like D-line in the SEC is the same way. Like who are the MFers on the D-line that you are literally scared to line up against right now?
They're all in the NFL draft.
And I could give you 2 or 3 from every team, including Mississippi State, including South Carolina, including Ole Miss, like including Arkansas. So it just they don't feel like there's a ton of those guys out there either.
Colin Simmons, Dylan Stewart are going to be the 2 big headliners.
But
you're
dude,
right.
Texas's edges are insane. Trey Moore's coming back. Ethan Burke's coming back. Like you don't want to be a tackle playing Texas this year. I promise you that. And it's one of the reasons that I'm like some of this Will Campbell stuff is just bullshit. Like, go look at the gauntlet that he played last year. He played like first or second round edge guy like 6 out of 7 weeks in a row. And the South Carolina game was a little iffy for him, but that was some protection stuff too. Like we all get got, but like he held his own. So yeah, last year was a good year. and Texas doesn't get enough credit for how good their edges are going to be. They overcame a massive hurdle inside last year, which everybody said, you're not going to get another Sway. You're not going to get two of these guys again. Okay, well, they were pretty good in there. We'll see if they can do it again because the edges are going to be fantastic, and they might, right there next to Deontay Lawson, they might have the best off the ball. I'll say it. He's the best off the ball linebacker in the SEC right now because he can do everything. He can walk up and blitz off the edge. He can cover. He's sideline to sideline. He can thump with offensive linemen. Like, they probably have the best off the ball linebacker too. So that defense got a chance to be legit.
I think it's the best defense returning in college football. I have Texas as my preseason number one. The All-Americans at every level. I mean, it's pretty unbelievable to think about.
Well, another thing, Connor, like everybody goes nuts about, like you brought up Cam Coleman and Ryan Williams. The numbers might not be better. Go watch some of what Ryan Wingo did.
Yeah.
And like Greg tried to make a joke the other day on the show, and he's like, well, he didn't have all the 5 stars like those guys. And I'm like, I actually think he did. Like, I think he was up there pretty high. Like, he had all 5 of them filled in. So, like,
Coleman,
yeah.
The Coleman Ryan Williams conversation is always going to be there just because they're both state of Alabama guys
right,
that
yeah.
stayed in that state. And it's going to be synonymous. Like, you mentioned that with Alabama and Auburn fans.
Sure.
And it's just
But Wingo is big time. Like, he's big time, and he's mentally where you want that position to be too. Like, he's all about it. So I think Texas is going to be fun to watch this year.
Maybe Texas is the answer to this question, even though they got 4 new offensive linemen. But if you had to pick one SEC offensive line to be a steadying force, just high floor, that's going to be a strength of a team. And we're kind of assuming health, which you never should. And that's such an important part of, an offensive line with continuity and all that. But if you were picking one of those units just to be that, like, hey, set it and forget it type group, who would you go with? Because I think it's a pretty wide open question.
It's not a fair question at all. I will say this, they're not going to be the group, but Oklahoma's group's going to be a lot better. They got a D3 tackle who I think is going to be great for them. I can't remember his name right now, but I watched his film. He's really good. I think Florida has a chance to be that group. Their system allows for it a lot more than a lot of the other systems. But let's go process of elimination here. Like Alabama, you lost your best guy. Like maybe your 2 best guys. Like Auburn's going to be better, but am I planting my flag with that group saying they're the best in the league? I can't do that yet. Georgia struggled last year and they lost their best guys. Kentucky struggled last year. They got more fill in the gap guys. Like LSU lost 2 great tackles and a great guard. Ole Miss's group was supposed to be 10 times better last year, and they were a liability. It's not going to be Mississippi State. South Carolina's group was young last year, but I don't think they're going to be that good. Tennessee lost their guys. They're not going to be there, even though I do like some of the gaps that they filled. A&M, I think, is a bit of a wild card because they had to mix and match so much, but they do have some ability. It's not going to be Vandy. The team to watch there is Missouri.
Lost their best guy too.
And I mean, listen, nobody was tooting the Armand Mimbu horn more than I was last year. I love the kid, but Caden Green was pretty good. You got Connor Tollison back at center, and you go get 2 transfer tackles that I think have a chance to be pretty good for you. So, and once again, very similar to what I said about Florida. If you know it and they get enough reps in it, that system can allow for you to be really good when it's not a bunch of Tyler Bookers or Orlando Paces out there. Like you don't need 3 Quentin Nelsons to be good in that scheme, in that system, because you're making guys go east and west. You're getting them off balance. Like you're getting them on different levels. Like you can win different ways when you run what they run. And they got a glass eater at tight end that'll help them in Norfleet. Norfleet's a badass. I love Norfleet. So that'll help make that group look a little bit better too.
Maybe this is the answer to that question will lead into this one, but it feels like, you talk about where all the, the stud defensive linemen in the SEC, like, are we just at an era where they're all of a sudden like, hey, you see them and then they're gone just like that? Kind of feels like the same thing is happening with running back. The last 2 years, there's some good running backs coming back in the SEC, and I don't want to diminish that. Like Moss coming off the ACL, Baugh is going to be good. Hardy, you just talked about that Mizzou offensive line. Frazier at Georgia, Durham at LSU. Like the Texas duo, if Baxter can come back fully healthy. Good backs, superstar backs, they're not there.
I'll
is that a fair
I'll give
assessment?
you one better, and you're great with numbers, so you might actually know this. How many 1,000-yard rushers do you think we had last year?
Is there 2?
3.
Golly.
Dylan Sampson, Jarquez Hunter, and Quintravian Wisner.
Dylan Sampson had the rushing title locked up like week 8.
And it feels like we usually have like 5.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. Now, I do know you can talk about the devaluation of the position. You can talk about, which, by the way, the only crazier number than that was, do you know how many 1,000-yard receivers we had last year?
Because Trey Harris came up just short, didn't he?
Not just short, but he was out a couple of games, so he didn't get there.
Right. He didn't end up getting there. Keandre Lambert-Smith did not end up getting there. There was one, right?
Yeah. If you get it, I'll be impressed.
Golly.
I wouldn't have gotten it before we did this on the air.
It was Andrew Armstrong.
It was.
At Arkansas, yeah.
But like even the top 5, like Kevin Coleman's in there. Jordan Watkins is in there. And you think about the guys that we had coming back, like that we were going nuts about, Kyron Lacey, Luther Burden. Like we thought, you mentioned him, Trey Hill. I mean, we thought all those guys were going to be, going for 1,500. And that was almost weirder than the rushing thing. I think a couple of things are happening. Number one, very few teams are leaning on a guy. So it makes it hard for you to be dominant. It's hard for you to appear to be what Ashton Jeanty was for Boise last year because you're not getting those kind of carries. A couple of things are in play there. One, and I talked to Sark about this before the season. He's like, we're playing more freshmen and more guys earlier than ever before. Like, we've got to get them in. Number one, we're going to have injuries. We need more guys ready. 2, the season's going to be longer. He's like, I don't mind saying it. We're planning for a playoff run, and we got to have bodies that are capable. So I think that's happening a little bit more. And then in a little bit of a similar way that it hurts offensive line play, I think running backs need some continuity. Like, I think you need to know your guys and know your quarterback and know your offensive linemen and know how things open up. Like, a perfect example of this is Tank Bigsby when Harsin brought that offense in and they were running outside zone. Tank Bigsby he's perfect for the stretch play. Like, put one foot in the ground, go north and south. But what he didn't understand was you cannot take ball and sprint to line of scrimmage in the stretch play work. Because very rarely are you going to beat everybody to the edge and then go north and south and it works. You got to allow for some flow, some overflow. Some guys get caught up, and that's where things open up. But he would just go, which you love that about the kid because he just wants to run people over. But, like, that's not how the play works. I think the movement in college football hurts that position a little bit too, because we hear coaches say this all the time. If you're not going to pick up guys in pass pro, you're not playing. You're going to get your quarterback killed. You can't be that kind of liability. So we'll take 0.8 less seconds on our 40 or maybe 10 pounds lighter if a guy's at least getting in front of that linebacker to not have him knock our quarterback's helmet off. So all the movement, I think, hurts a little bit of the continuity. And then I think you have multiple guys carrying the ball. Mobile quarterbacks are hurting too because, what are they doing? They're pulling the ball out of the belly. There's not a bunch of McElroys out there that want to hand the football off right now. Like, whether it's an RPO, like, go listen to Saban when he was talking about Tua. And, like, when he really got talking about him, he's like, you think that kid's going to hand the ball off when he can potentially pull it and throw it to Devontae Smith or Henry Ruggs or Jerry Jeudy? Like, he ain't giving him the ball. So I think all that goes into play. And there's a little more of this now happening also. And you'll probably know the 2 or 3 places I'm talking about. And this is unfortunate. But there's placating now because you got to keep guys on your roster. And what's more important, this is weird to say because, when you and I were growing up, this was not a thing. What's more important now, a big boy receiver or a big boy running back?
Big boy receiver, easily. And
he ain't staying if he ain't getting the ball. So you can go find another running back. Everybody's brain says, we can get another running back. We can get another running back. Now, are you getting Ashton Jeanty? No. Are you getting Dylan Sampson? Probably not. But you get a receiver, you better find a way to get him the ball a couple times a game. And that's happening. I promise you. I've talked to coaches about it. They're like, we don't really care what the score is. Like, that guy's getting targets because we just don't want him to leave or think about leaving. So I think that's another thing that takes a little bit away from the running backs.
It's a question that has so many different answers to it. And I'm even looking at the way it played out the first year of the playoff. You look at, Dylan Sampson and Ashton Jeanty and Cam Scadaboo, these guys that were workhorse backs, and then look what they were in the playoff. They were looking like they were running on fumes. And some guys obviously worked through that better than not, but everybody's going to look at Ohio State. It's a copycat league. The Judkins experience that he signed up for with Travion Henderson in the backfield, and like knowing Penn State had this, versatile backfield as well. And knowing that Texas had this versatile backfield, even though they lean more on Wisner down the stretch. But yeah, it does feel like we're entering an era where that's going to be emphasized more and more. Do you just want to get to the playoff? Because if so, you're going to ride that back. But if you're talking about like truly winning a national championship, you're probably taking a different approach, and maybe that could definitely be factoring into this.
Well, and if you go watch my podcast, it was kind of eye-opening watching the national championship game and then going back and really dissecting the national championship game, because their run game is why they won that game. Now, what happened was two things. One, it forced the defense to be something different, and it forced them to be what Ohio State wanted him to be. And then everything that they built around it ended up also working and benefiting them and helping them win that game. And it was really based off like one or two plays, and that's what I kind of highlighted and showed. So it at the end of the day, Connor, I think it goes back to, if you get to this playoff and you're one-dimensional, no. Just no. I don't care if it's Adrian Peterson, if it's Cam Newton, you're not, one guy's not winning this playoff. There's gonna be too many damn good teams in front of you. It's kind of like this Final Four right now. Like whoever wins this Final Four, is going to be maybe the most tested national champion we've ever had. Like I said with Houston, they could get the highest seed possible in every round. First team to ever do it. So I just don't think you're going to be a one-dimensional football team, running the ball, throwing the ball, leaning on one receiver, leaning on one running back. If you got an edge guy that's got 20 sacks, that's not going to be enough to just go win this playoff, because you're going to have a team that can run the other way, or that has a good tackle and a good tight end that can neutralize. You don't have to, everybody always says remove these things, take him out. All you need to do is neutralize dominance and don't let it overwhelm you. If you can do that, then other things can happen and get going. So I still think balance is key. And the weirdest part about Ohio State, I don't know what this says about the playoff, where we're going, where we are. And I've had, thankfully, a couple of Ohio State fans that have some sense about them have agreed with this. You go back and watch that team at almost any point in the regular season, that is not who they were against Tennessee. That is not who they were in any of those playoff games. At the line of scrimmage, they didn't play that way consistently. It flashed a little bit, but it was consistent in the playoffs. So the only takeaway I really have there is you better have some vets, and you better have some leadership, and you better have some guys that somewhere in that tank have the ability to take over. And it might not be Will Anderson, or, it might not be Terrell Suggs, but they better have something in there that they can go get it and kick your ass with on a pretty regular basis.
I want to get you out of here with what Kirby Smart said. A comment that made a lot of headlines this week, talking about being worried about the future of the sport. Everyone's on pins and needles with this House settlement that's going to be coming up this month. Agents are out of control, requesting Zoom calls for all their players, and talking about just cutting sports and how that's not going to be the benefit to the kids. When you hear someone as respected as Kirby Smart is, and you're someone that loves football, maybe as much as anyone I've ever met, where do you kind of land on this? Because it does feel very doom and gloom with a lot of different elements. And sometimes it's kind of hard to hear that from the guy that's on a 9-figure contract.
Okay. First off, this is almost a compliment to Kirby Smart, but let's think about how he came up. He and I, we played against each other. So actually tackled him on an interception. You can find the highlight. But he didn't come in 5-star guy. He didn't come in the one that everybody was waiting to watch play. He had to use some intelligence, some toughness. He had to wait his turn to even get some reps. And I feel like I was a little similar to that. I think you have a different appreciation for it when you go through it that way, when you have to, I don't want to say grind a little bit more, because there's not many people who play college football, super talented, no talent. If you play, I have this conversation with my son right now, my 7-year-old. My 4-year-old doesn't know the difference yet. But my 7-year-old comes home and he's like, Dad, so-and-so at school said Babe Ruth is trash. And I said, well, ask them, have they seen the tape on Babe Ruth? Because I haven't. So how did they get it? And I want to see it. Dad, so-and-so said Klay Thompson's trash. And so the conversation I've started having with him is, hey, buddy, here's what we're going to do. If there is a human being that's getting paid to play a sport, we are not going to demean him as being trash because he's getting a check to play a game. All right. And your friends can say what they want, but we ain't doing that in this house. But that's a little bit of where society is. So if you're playing college football, like you're putting in some work. Now he had to put in different work. I feel like I maybe put in some different work, but I had to lean on the weight room. I had to lean on like effort a lot of times, leadership, knowledge, those kind of things. But you have a different appreciation for all of it, I think, when you probably know deep down inside you wouldn't have benefited greatly from what's happening right now anyway. So I don't want to say it's harder to look at it that way, but you just appreciate things in a different way. Like, now being a dad, you look at a lot of things in life a lot differently than you did 5 years ago. Same thing for me. I got 3, and there are things that I see now and I'm like, how did I not know that this is the way that this was? And so a little bit past that, like people take that into consideration. In its totality, it sucks. I don't know another way to say it. I'm all for player rights. I'm all for everybody getting theirs. But it's funny how we had all these people kicking these doors in and banging on these doors and wanting to strap C4 to these doors and blow them up and let everybody come running in. And now we're upset about how it worked out. And if there is the biggest mistake the NCAA has made time and time and time again is making decisions without understanding the consequences. And unfortunately, in big time college athletics, the consequences can be referenced as the underbelly. So what is everyone going to do to snake that rule? What is everyone going to do to work around? Like, what are the workarounds? Because that's what everybody's going to go find. And that's what they're going to try to do and what they're going to try to use. Do I wish that it meant more playing at a certain school? Do I wish people chose schools because of the history and the tradition and who they played and the rivalries? Yeah, of course I do. The good news is that doesn't ruin it for fans. If Ryan Williams is friends with everybody on Auburn's team, that doesn't make it any different how I view that game. Like, I still want to see Auburn beat Alabama. And Greg McElroy still wants to see Alabama beat Auburn. It doesn't matter. Like, he gets more pissed off than anybody I've seen with these kids that tweet out, "Go get your bag, homie." Like, good luck, bro. Greg's like, man, I'd be middle fingering that dude. Like, get the hell out of here and never come back. And there's a part of me that kind of feels that way too. Now, all circumstances are different. Not every transfer is created the same. But there's a part of what this once was from a perspective of meaning and understanding and probably more so involvement. And that's what I think we've lost, is that this is what NASCAR lost, man. Like, NASCAR got away from the involvement that got it to where it was and put it in a place, I think, to where it's struggling right now. And I fear for that with college football. My fear is that we're going to be so concerned with media rights and who's playing who and all this other junk that the involvement from the fans, when it's all said and done and all the dust clears, the involvement of everyone, all of us, is what got us to where we are. The meaning is what got us to where we are. The fact that when Dak Prescott beat my team 11 years ago, like, I still hate that motherfucker because of that. And I'm not really referencing him individually, but like, that's the way an Ole Miss fan really feels. Like, I still have visions of multiple running backs named Fred every year for Arkansas just running through Auburn at 11:30 on CBS in the doubleheader weekend. Like Fred Talley, Fred Smith, Fred Jones, Fred whatever. Like, every single year, 192 yards. So it still bothers me to talk about it. And that's what got us to where we are. We didn't get there because the best teams played the best teams every week. We didn't get there because we wanted to include everybody in the playoffs. Hell, we probably had more people paying attention to it and arguing about it when we didn't even have a championship game. Because what we do? We debated the whole offseason. USC Auburn, USC Oklahoma, who would have won? What would have happened? Split national championships, Michigan, Washington, how would that have gone? So I think we are unfortunately pulling this cart away from involvement. And the weird part, Connor, is I think a lot of the power brokers think they're helping people be more involved. And you're not, because you're taking away some of the reasons that people fell in love with it. And when you don't love something, you don't care about it. And when you don't care about it, you don't put time into it. And you're damn sure not putting resources into it. So that's my fear for all of it. Because I'm, like Mark Rick said a long time ago, there's enough to go around for everybody. Like, I love seeing Troy make a run. I love seeing Boise make a run. I love what Coastal did a couple of years ago. I love seeing that. And even if it's just App State winning at the Big House, or how about this? Even if it's just Jacksonville State scaring the shit out of Auburn at home, that's good for college sports. And I'm like, now the NCAA tournament's no different. What are we pushing for? Get rid of these automatic bids. Like, we don't want 27-2 Mercer or 25-1 Belmont. Like, we want 17-17 Missouri. You know, we want 16-20 Illinois in, because more people will watch. Well, I bet more people care about a team that like won their conference, won their league, actually has a chance of pulling upset, instead of blah, blah. We already saw that game 3 times this year. We get to go watch them again. Who gives a shit?
The Princeton Georgetown first round game. I just watched that 30 for 30 short last night, and the reminder of what can happen, and you never know, of that whole, like, because the whole conversation at that time, late 80s, was they're going to take away the automatic bids, and this is going to be such a bad thing for the future of college sports. And the title is called The $1 Billion Game, because of how it impacted several decades of being able to keep these mid-majors involved. And there's something to be said for that for college football as well, and the future of the sport and what it's going to look like, with trying to make sure everybody can at least have a seat have a seat for these moments.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'll give you my 2 problems that I don't think we'll ever have a solution for. Okay. Number 1, we talk about having this commissioner or czar of college football, which I think could be great, but it's never going to happen
ever.
And what comes with that as far as difficulty is, like, you can't get mad at Greg Sankey for this. He doesn't get paid to babysit college football. He gets paid to make the SEC the best it's ever been. That's his job. So don't be mad at the conference commissioners for getting theirs. That's what they're paid to do. And I think there's this mindset that everybody should look after everyone, and it's just not real. So I think when you look at it from that perspective, there's not going to be any real balance, because everybody's got to go take care of theirs and everybody's got to go get theirs. And then from a competitive standpoint, moving forward, teams are just not going to be able to keep up. And you're already seeing teams say, we're going down to D3, or we're only going to have this many scholarships, or we're going to do this or that. And, you know, I don't know where you go from there. So it's that revenue wheel that the smaller schools have been hanging on, just grasping for life with like 2 or 3% of for a long time. Like, they're chopping at that string, and eventually it's going to cut. It's going to break. And that's why I say all the time, we need a Mark Cuban or somebody who can sit down. Like, we haven't heard from Derek Dooley in a while. Apparently he was trying to help do this. I'd love to hear what his thoughts on it. Somebody's got to go to the next tier of football and say, this is what we can do for you, and this is how it can be viable. Because, you know, like I know, like, whether it's been Louisiana the last few years, Troy the last few years, Coastal Carolina, Boise, like, these teams are competitive and fun, and there's good players. It's good football. Like, that playoff, that would work. Is it going to do 20 million people for a semifinal game? No, but you can make it work and make it go. You just got to figure out how. And I'm afraid that string's going to get cut and no one's going to have any idea what to do. And then it's going to take 10, 12, 20 more years to actually figure that out.
Very true. Couldn't agree more. Cole, great stuff. Appreciate it as always. Everyone go watch Cole UFL every weekend. You'll see Cole all over the sideline, you know, trying to get pieces of gum, doing whatever he can. Listen to McElroy and Cube, as well as Cube Show Pod, wherever you get your podcasts. I forget, Read and React. You got like 6 other shows I should plug?
I think that's it for now. Read and React, I hope we're coming back in the fall. McElroy and Cubelic, 7 to 10. Jocks, you can watch that live on YouTube every morning, and then Cube Show on YouTube. Subscribe. So
Thanks,
we
Cole.
struggle in the off season. I don't know if you do, but like, we struggle in the off season. People just don't even show up for it. So whatever.
Hey man, all that matters is that people are here.
That's it.
That's all that matters. Thanks, man.
Yep.